Most people think New Jersey is nothing but the turnpike and late-night diners, but if you push far enough into the haunted Pine Barrens, you'll discover entire towns that simply vanished. Whole communities were wiped off the map, some emptied overnight by the government, some swallowed by wildfires and floods, and one that locals still whisper opened a doorway to somewhere else. You've heard of the Jersey Devil, but you've never heard of the 5 places we're about to show you. 1. Feltville, the deserted village. Tucked just 20 miles west of New York City, inside the 2,000-acre Watching Reservation, lies a place locals still call the deserted village. Most drivers on Route 78 have no idea that a perfectly preserved 19th-century mill town is hiding a 5-minute detour away. In 1845, a Boston-born paper millionaire named David Felt bought 760 acres along Blue Brook and built his own private kingdom. He dammed the stream, erected a 3-story paper mill, and within 5 years had 175 workers and their families living in neat rows of houses he owned. There was a church, attendance mandatory, a school, free if you worked for him, a company store, and a carriage house. Workers nicknamed him King David because he literally controlled every part of their lives, from paycheck to prayer. At its peak, Feltville shipped thousands of high-grade paper to Manhattan every week. The mill wheels never stopped. Then, in 1860, David Felt suddenly retired and sold everything. The Civil War spiked cotton prices, railroads shifted trade routes, and one by one the new owners failed. By 1880, the factory was silent, houses empty, and the forest started swallowing the roads. In 1882, it briefly became Glenside Park, a summer resort with painted cottages and weekend dances, but the Jersey Shore killed that dream too. Union County finally turned it into parkland in the 1920s. Today, only 10 original buildings remain, 8 of them still standing exactly where Felt placed them 180 years ago. 3 families actually live here year-round as caretakers, making Feltville one of the only ghost towns in America with a population, sort of. Walk the loop trail at dusk, and you'll see the church with its original bell, the old store, Masker's barn restored as a visitor center, and the stone foundations of the mill right beside the brook that once powered an empire. Every October, the county runs official deserted village night tours because the atmosphere is just unsettling. No murders, no disasters, no curses, just the quiet weight of a place that succeeded brilliantly and then vanished anyway.
But here's what keeps people coming back. Feltville isn't the creepiest story in these woods. It's not even the oldest. The next town we're visiting produced something far more dangerous than paper. When its furnaces finally went cold, they left behind ruins that still glow red on certain nights, and a mystery that no historian has ever fully explained. 2. Batsto Village. Drive to the dead center of New Jersey's 1.1 million-acre Pine Barrens, and you'll reach a place that once supplied cannonballs and kettles to George Washington's army, and then quietly outlived every iron town around it. This is Batsto Village, established in 1766 and still standing today inside Wharton State Forest. It began when Philadelphia ironmaster Charles Reed dammed the Batsto River and built a furnace that produced over 1,000 tons of pig iron a year. During the Revolution, Batsto secretly cached shot and supplies for the Continental Army, while British raiders hunted for it through these same pines. After the war, new owners added a large glassworks and sawmill. At its 1800s peak, more than 500 people lived here in a self-contained company town. Furnace workers, glassblowers, charcoal burners, and their families, all surrounded by 40 buildings, including a mansion, church, grist mill, general store, school, and its own post office, still hand-cancels mail the old-fashioned way. The furnace stack glowed red every night. Then the bog iron ran dry. Pennsylvania coal and richer ore from the Great Lakes were cheaper and better. The iron furnace shut down for good in 1848. The glassworks closed in 1867, and by the 1870s, the village was nearly empty. In 1876, Philadelphia businessman Joseph Wharton bought the entire 96,000-acre tract to protect his city's water supply. He kept Batsto as a private estate until the state of New Jersey purchased it in the 1950s and turned it into one of America's finest living history sites. Today, 33 original buildings stand exactly where they did 2 centuries ago. You can walk through the 36-room Batsto mansion with its original 1880s wallpaper, ring the 1796 church bell, and stand inside the restored furnace that hasn't been lit since the 1840s. The state runs daily tours, live blacksmithing, and glass-blowing demonstrations using the same methods the villagers used. Over 150,000 visitors come every year, yet on a quiet weekday, the village feels untouched by time. But here's what most visitors never notice. On certain moonlit nights, rangers say the old furnace stack appears to glow a dull red again, even though no fire has burned inside since 175 years. No one has ever filmed it. They blame heat shimmer or imagination, but the next town we're visiting didn't need imagination. When World War I ended, its 15,000 workers walked out in a single day, and an entire city built for munitions simply vanished from every map. 3. Amatal. Less than 10 miles from Atlantic City's neon lights sits a ghost city that once housed up to 20,000 people and produced 20% of all U.S. munitions for World War I. This is Amatal, New Jersey, a complete wartime metropolis built from nothing in 1918 and then dismantled so completely that most locals today have never heard the name. When America entered World War I, the Army needed explosives fast. In March 1918, the federal government seized 6,000 acres of pine forest in Mullica Township, Atlantic County, and within 9 months had constructed one of the largest shell loading plants on the East Coast. Streets were laid out in perfect grids, with 250 barrack-style dormitories, mess halls for 5,000 at a time, a hospital, fire department, railroad station, schools, a YMCA, and even its own police force. Workers, mostly women, earning the nickname munitionsettes, arrived from Philadelphia and New York. At peak, 3 shifts ran 24 hours a day, filling 75mm and 155mm artillery shells with Amatal, a new high-explosive mix of TNT and ammonium nitrate designed to stretch scarce TNT supplies. By November 1918, the plant had loaded over 7 million shells.
Then, on November 11, 1918, the armistice was signed. The very next day, the whistles blew for the last time. Within weeks, thousands of workers were gone. The government auctioned off wooden buildings for lumber. Some were moved whole to nearby towns, others demolished. By 1923, the plant ceased operations entirely, and the forests started taking it back. In 1926, industrialist Charles M. Schwab bought part of the site and built the Amatal Speedway, also known as the Atlantic City Speedway, a legendary 1.5-mile wooden board track that drew crowds of 40,000 to watch stars like Harry Hartz and Ralph De Palma race 500-mile events. But after fatal crashes and the Great Depression, it closed in 1929. With the track dismantled by 1932. Today, almost nothing remains above ground. Concrete loading bunkers, angled to direct any blast upward, are cracked and moss-covered. Rail spurs have become hiking trails in the Hamilton Creek Wildlife Management Area, and old streets are sandy fire roads. You can still find melted glass from test explosions and occasional shell casings unearthed by hikers or ATVs. The only official marker is a small historical plaque on Amatal Road in Hamilton. But here's the part that still gives explosives experts chills. Amatal becomes more unstable over time as it reacts with soil, turning century-old unexploded shells into hidden time bombs. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers continues regular sweeps of the site under their cleanup program, warning that disturbances could set off buried remnants even today. Locals call it the place that can still kill you 100 years later. And that's not even the strangest story these pines are hiding. The next town didn't disappear because of war or money. It disappeared because people say they opened a door and something came through. 4. Harrisville. Deep inside Wharton State Forest, where the Oswego River cuts through cedar swamps and sugar sand roads disappear into the pines, stand the red brick ruins of a town that once made New Jersey rich on paper. This is Harrisville, the Pineland's first and most successful paper mill, gone for good after one devastating fire. The story starts in the 1830s when William McCarty and his partners built a modern rag paper mill on the site of an older sawmill. In 1855, the powerful Harris family of Philadelphia bought the operation and turned it into an industrial giant. By the 1870s, the mill was turning out thousands of pounds of high-grade writing paper every day, shipped by mule wagon to Camden, then by steamboat to New York and Philadelphia publishers. The village grew around the factory: 35 brick and frame worker houses, a company store, a one-room school and a Methodist church, and a grand mansion for the Harris family overlooking the dam. At its peak, about 200 people lived here, and the giant water wheel never stopped. Then the market changed. Cheaper wood pulp paper from Maine and Canada flooded the country, and cotton rags, the raw material for fine paper, became scarce and expensive after the Civil War. By the 1890s, the mill was struggling. The final blow came in April 1914 when a massive forest fire swept through the Pine Barrens and gutted the factory. The Harris family never rebuilt. Houses were abandoned one by one, and by the 1920s, only ruins remained. Today, Harrisville is one of the most haunting sights in the Pinelands. Massive brick archways and walls rise from the vines. The broken dam still forms a dark, cedar-lined pond, and sandy trails follow the exact layout of the old streets. You can trace the foundations of 35 homes, the store and the school, in complete silence except for the wind and the river. But here's what still unsettles even the rangers who patrol these trails. On windless nights, campers near the pond sometimes report hearing the low, rhythmic thud of a water wheel that burned to ash over 100 years ago. No one has ever recorded it. They blame imagination or the river playing tricks. Because the last town on our list didn't burn, didn't flood, and wasn't abandoned for money. It vanished because, starting in the 1970s, a group of people claimed they accidentally tore open a doorway to somewhere else, and the story got so big that the government itself stepped in to make the place disappear from every map. 5. Ong's Hat. If you drive the back roads of Burlington County, deep in the Pine Barrens, you'll hit a lonely intersection with a single faded sign, Ong's Hat Road. There is no town, no ruins, no foundations, just pines, sand, and silence. Yet for decades, this empty crossroads was the center of one of America's strangest stories, one that began with a simple hat and ended with claims of interdimensional travel.
The real Ong's Hat started around 1780 as a tiny clearing with a tavern run by a man locals called John Ong. The famous legend says he got into a fight with a woman, threw his silk hat in the air in rage, and it caught on a tree branch. The spot became Ong's Hat, and by the 1850s it was a minor stagecoach stop with a handful of houses and a post office that operated from 1849 to 1865. That's it. The post office closed, the houses rotted away, and by the early 1900s the clearing was empty again. End of story until the late 1970s. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, a small group of Princeton-area artists, writers, and counterculture figures rented an abandoned hunting cabin near the old crossroads. They experimented with meditation, sensory deprivation tanks, and early computers. One of them, Joseph Matheny, along with collaborators, began writing and distributing strange pamphlets titled incunabula papers. These claimed that a group had accidentally opened a portal using a device called the egg, allowing travel to parallel Earths. The pamphlets spread through underground zines, early BBS bulletin boards, and eventually the infant Internet. By the early 1990s, Ong's hat had become the world's first full-blown Internet urban legend, what we now call an alternate reality game. People drove out to the pines looking for the cabin, the egg, even the portal. The Forest Service had to post signs and gates because so many cars were getting lost or stuck. Today, there is literally nothing left except a dirt road and a single cedar tree that locals say might be the original hat tree. The cabin simply decayed and collapsed over time. Joseph Matheny has openly admitted for decades that the entire story was brilliantly crafted fiction, but it still inspired books, documentaries, and countless creepypastas. Here's the part that keeps researchers up at night. Even though the portal story was proven fake, its themes of quantum physics and altered consciousness closely mirrored real and once classified government research from the same era. Matheny has said in interviews that fringe groups like his sometimes drew curious glances from agencies watching unconventional science, but no documents have ever surfaced to confirm it. And that's the final secret of these 5 ghost towns. Some places disappear because the money runs out, some because fire takes them, and one disappears because a story got so powerful that reality itself couldn't tell the difference anymore.